Hello, I'm Mandi McLeod. Welcome to Straight Talk. Coming up in the program, outside cows have a smaller environmental hoofprint than those kept inside. We delve into the latest US study that's discovered methane emissions are lower for cows housed outside during the year. New Zealand Pork wants to give new biosecurity rules the chop, saying they up the risk of spreading a potentially devastating pork disease, porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome. The Pork Industries Producer Board has taken court action against the Agriculture and Forestry Ministry to stop the changes taking effect. We hear from the pork industry's top man about the latest developments in the courtroom battle. And the red meat sector strategy was released last week. We ask our resident red meat expert what his take on it is. Joining me today is James Anderson, agricultural consultant and director of Anderson Consultancy Limited, and Sam McIvor, CEO of New Zealand Pork. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sam, Pork New Zealand wants new biosecurity rules to be given the chop, basically to stop the risk of porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome coming into New Zealand. Where are you at on the court case?
We've filed orders in court, and we appear before the judge again next week. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, given where we are in the legal process, unfortunately I can't say any more.
What really prompted you to take this action? Because it's quite unusual, isn't it?
For us, there is a risk, and we believe the risk isn't dealt with appropriately, and we want to protect our farmers.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit about what porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome is, apart from a mouthful?
Yeah, it is. It's the world's #1 pig disease. It's a RNA virus. And it's spread around the world over the last probably 20 or so years. And the issue with it is that there's actually nothing to fix it at this stage. So there's no vaccine that works. Thus the industry's concern around if we got it, what we could do.
How would it come into New Zealand?
The essence is that it could come in through pork. So raw pork contains a virus, and if it was fed to pigs, pigs can pick up the virus and be infected with it.
So a little bit, there's probably an analogy with that and the British foot and mouth outbreak with the raw.
I mean, there are some similarities, yeah.
Yeah. Cooking meat will kill a disease, but not it spread to humans. Is that right?
No. The disease we're talking about, PRRS, has no effect on humans at all. It's solely a pig disease.
A pig disease, yeah.
So you're trying to stop the disease getting to pigs by cooking it or curing it.
Right. Okay, so going on just to another issue, sow crates. 5 months ago, you announced that in 2015 you were going to outlaw, well, what we call now as gestational crates.
Correct.
Less than 40% of your farmers use them. So what's the big issue?
The sow stall issue has been one that's been going on globally. I mean, I think the very heart of the issue here is that we do have a bit of a disconnect between urban New Zealand and rural New Zealand. To give you the example, in the pork industry, we have about 150 farmers. We've got, 1.4 million households in New Zealand. The chances of town folk understanding what's going on farms is quite remote, or having visited a pig farm. So I think the whole issue that we've seen over the last year or so is about really the industry and town folk coming together and starting to understand each other. So farmers are better understanding what people in town are raising as issues, and by the same token, we as an industry are trying to be transparent about what we do and educate consumers. So, you know, the example of us putting together a website, pigfarminginnewzealand.co.nz, that takes people inside our farms, gives them a video on exactly how we do things and why, is a key part of us trying to connect with urban New Zealanders.
It's a really interesting point. James, we've seen, in the UK, for example, a lot of sheep farmers will bring their ewes inside and separate out small mobs of ewes to lamb in relatively small confined spaces. What's the difference?
Well, on face value, perhaps not a lot, but I think when you look at the reality of it, I'm not sure about the UK, but certainly in some of the other Northern Hemisphere countries, it is a welfare issue. It's actually a regulation that the stock must be housed during certain periods of the year. Also, really what we're talking about here is not so much an issue of housing, it's also it's more of an issue of how the stock, or the pigs in this case, are housed. The other issue too is that of, I guess, consumer perception, or the and perhaps the welfare groups will find it a little bit harder to get the public behind them to say, hey, let's move these sheep outside into the cold, wet environment where they could be nice and cosy in a nice warm barn.
Sam, my understanding from the Mike pig video was that not a lot of that was shot in New Zealand.
I'm not aware of whether it was or not. I think the key thing here is that concerns have been raised with the industry, and I think, in fact, I'm really proud of the way that the industry has responded to them. The industry was on a path that started in 2005 to phase down and eventually out the use of stalls. I think the most important thing for farmers is about having the confidence to move. So for them, there were sort of three prerequisites. One was, is it's going to cost money? So there's a lot of capital cost involved. Secondly, they want to be confident about having the right technology and the right management in place. And thirdly, the changes require a lot more skill from a staff perspective. And I think farmers are confident that they've started to get those aligned now. So 2015 allows us to get out in an orderly fashion.
James, last week, Minister Carter opened a world-class facility, the Ruminant Methane Research Centre. It's the largest purpose-built facility in the world for measuring methane emissions, amongst others, under controlled situations. At the same time this week, Penn State University released a report saying, surprise, surprise, that cows housed outside have got a lower environmental footprint with regards to methane emission than those cows housed inside. Do you find this slightly incongruous?
Potentially, but I think it is important. That is one study, and the importance of science. We must replicate these studies, and we already know that just through the difference in feedstuffs, there's a range of something like between 8% and 50% in the methane production. So it is important that we do have a study based on New Zealand conditions, based on New Zealand animals, and also the ability to actually build up factual information, because the driver here is obviously to do with climate change. One of our major impediments overseas is through market access. One of the arguments being used is the concept of food miles. And now, if we're going to have an effective counter argument, that we need facts behind this, and I think that's what this.
But it's a controlled environment. Sam, what do you think about that? I mean, how real is that controlled environment going to be?
You're talking in terms of the research? Yeah, I mean, I guess there is always a balance between what you can do in a lab and what happens out in the real world. And that's a challenge we face all of the time with research is how do we apply what we learn under controlled systems out in the real world that a farmer's got to grapple with day to day. But you've got to start somewhere, though.
So you guys said it's a really positive thing.
Oh, absolutely. Look, it's very early days, and one of the opportunities that this does provide is allows us to see if there is a genetic link between and methane production, and if there is, perhaps we can find some genetic markers and just through breeding alone reduce our methane output.
James, as our resident red meat sector our consultant, you've had a chance to read the 140-page document.
Yes, it's a meaty document.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. And I think including the appendices, it's 187 pages. So it is quite a big read, but it is well worth the read. For producers, I urge every sheep and beef farmer out there to actually read it and to persevere. Probably at least get to page 85, 86, something like that, and you'll start to find some answers.
Thanks, James. Coming up after the break, the national lamb kill is down 8%. We ask why, and so what? What are the implications for the rural economy? This little piggy went to market and no one knew where he'd come from. How important is food labelling in capturing the hearts and minds of consumers? And the Victorian Farmers Federation slams the Australian National Health and Medical Research Council report recommending Australians eat less red meat because of possible environmental concerns. All this and much more after the break. Welcome back to Straight Talk. In an interview with Country 99 TV News, Rob Davison from Beef and Lamb New Zealand Economic Service says a combination of last year's appalling weather conditions and increasing dairy conversions are to blame for the low lamb kill. James, I want to talk to you about this first. We've seen 8% lamb kill drop. Why?
Well,
apart from the obvious, the weather.
Well, I think that is the obvious issue, and perhaps the real issue is what impact is that going to have in the future, and it does have a real impact. Not least the farmers that have been affected severely. You know, there's some farmers down 30, 40, 50% on their lambing percentage, so that's a huge knock on their income. Probably the real issues are, from an industry point of view, is the fact that it further exacerbates the procurement or oversupply capacity, and then at the market end, it means that our exporters will struggle to meet certain markets. Now that opens up those markets for competitors.
But haven't we struggled to meet those markets for some time?
I think the world has, the whole world, not just us.
I think
it should be noted that, you know, the reason why we've got such a high, well, one of the reasons why we've got such high prices for lambs is because a reduction in sheep meat worldwide, but not just sheep meat. I think it's across the board.
A New Zealand statistics report in 2010 said that actually sheep numbers had increased 2010, contrary, I guess, to what we're hearing, and that the growth in conversions, dairy farm conversions that is, was actually in, well, not so much dairy conversions, but the cow numbers were increasing in the North Island, not the South Island in that same time period, which kind of seems a little bit counterintuitive.
It does. It does. And I think it's great news that we see that we are seeing that national flock stabilising somewhat. And perhaps that just shows a bit more underlying confidence out there in the industry, particularly in the sheep industry, perhaps a bit more confidence in the future.
Now, you've both read the red meat sector strategy report. James, I'd like to ask you first, and Sam can jump in. 140 pages plus indices. How was it? Summarise it in three sentences.
Very difficult, but look, in some ways there's nothing here, but in many respects there's a lot in there, and it does provide perhaps, maybe not a blueprint, but certainly a good idea of the future and where things can go with the sheep and beef industry, or the red meat industry, I should say. Main thing there for me was perhaps it just reinforced the positive outlook for the red meat sector and for food production in general. Demand for food is forecast to double by 2050, which is just huge. The other thing it really has highlighted, or helped to highlight, the fact that we really need to see greater cooperation at the market end of the spectrum, where the processors and exporters work together in our end markets. There's a new term, it's called, well, a new term to me, but anyway, co-opetition, which I've never ever heard of before, but it's a fantastic concept, but I think it's really what we need. Well, I think we do need competition at the farm gate.
Cooperative competition.
We do, cooperative competition, that's what we need at the farm gate, but we need that cooperation at the export end and not see our exporters undercut each other.
Sam, before you became Mr. Pork, you were Master Sheep and Beef. What do you make of the report?
Yeah, listen, there were three key words that stood out to me, and I finished reading the report about midnight last night. But they were information, aligned, and what's the third word? The third word was behaviour change. Mandy, you and I know about that. We spent a history on it. But I guess those were three key words to me. I want to congratulate the processing sector, because actually they've put up a whole lot of information which we haven't had before. And so now I think we understand a lot of information right through the chain, and that's key. The second thing was around alignment, and there is great potential. There's no doubt there's great potential, but actually farmers have got to be aligned with their processors, with the marketplace, with consumers, and I think that can happen. The third one is the key to me, is around behaviour change, and I think we've got a bunch of talented people in New Zealand, whether it be farmers, the processing industry or marketers. So I think it can happen, but it is about people changing the way that they behave towards each other and towards their customers. And the two ingredients that have got to go along with that behaviour change is good information and the right alignment.
Where does leadership fit in?
Leadership's got to happen right through the chain. Farmers have got to lead, and I have a very strong view that farmers should understand their consumers. And that's what's happened in our pork industry over the last year. Farmers have started to understand what consumers are to respond to them, but also to make sure that we're communicating with consumers.
Mm-hmm. Sam, how much of the pork that we eat in New Zealand is New Zealand pork?
Yeah, so we eat about 20 kgs per head of delicious pork, bacon and ham. The New Zealand industry has about 55% of that share. So every week we've got 700,000 kgs of pork, foreign pork, coming into the country. Most of it not up to the standards, the world-leading welfare standards, no hormone commitment, low antibiotic commitment that the New Zealand industry has made.
James, when you buy pork, where does it come from, apart from a pig? Do you know?
To be honest, I don't look at it. I don't look at it, but
should we?
My wife does most of the shopping. So.
Oh, it's just terrible. Terrible admission.
Well, listen, let me give James a bit of an education
please.
For a minute. We do have about 95% share of the fresh market, right? So if you go and buy some fresh pork, most of the time you can be assured that it will be New Zealand pork. But the import standards have just changed, so I think we're going to see more imported fresh frozen pork in our supermarkets. So my advice is look for the blue rosette that says 100% New Zealand pork. The bacon and ham category, I mean, that's a whole different kettle of fish, so to speak. 700,000 kgs a week, mainly going into the bacon and ham sector. Again, we identify a New Zealand product with 100% New Zealand bacon or ham, or look for the words New Zealand grown. But there's a whole lot of other stuff out there that might say manufactured in New Zealand, might say made in New Zealand, locally manufactured, all the things that make you think, oh, this is obviously New Zealand. Well, it's not. And so we're very strongly in favour of actually consumers wanting or being able to know. 90% of consumers want to buy New Zealand, 90% want country of origin, 60% aren't quite sure, a bit like you, James, aren't quite sure what they're getting.
Buying.
So, you know, for us, it is about clearly identifying the product and giving consumers the choice. At the end of the day, they might end up buying an imported product. I don't think they will, because I think
as long as I know.
We've got a better product and we do a better job, and we're committed to the New Zealand consumer.
Oh, and so Sam. Hey, James, the Victorian Farmers Federation have slammed a report in Australia by the Government Ministry Health Agency saying that consumers really should be a bit wary about eating beef because of a potential environmental hazard.
Well, it seems to be another attack again on farming, and where is this proof? I don't know. No, there is some science behind it, and again, it's probably.
But how do you know?
I don't. I just assume, and that, again, why I think it's important that we have a lot of science behind us. You know, the Methane Centre actually coming up with some solutions for us, so we can actually show the consumer and the world, the rest of the world, that hey, perhaps farming isn't as bad as what it's made out to be.
But how scary do you think it is that a government ministry in a country like Australia, which is very much like New Zealand, it really relies on its agricultural exports, is out there almost damning its own brand internally?
That's a terrible indictment on the perhaps it's political. Perhaps the farmer vote would probably similar to in Australia to here. We've got a very small vote. We're only sheep and beef farmers with 12,500 voters. Not a lot. There's not a lot of us out here compared to the rest of the market or the rest of the voting population.
So it's getting your facts right, and we need to have more of those facts.
Yeah, let me say, pork has got a very small environmental footprint, but I think the challenge for all of our industries is that we do need to have good information. We do need to communicate to people. We need to influence the right people, and we actually need to stand up for truth.
Absolutely.
Meat worldwide is under siege. We've got to hit back, but we've got to hit back with truth.
Oh, I like that. Under siege and hitting back with the truth. Coming up after the break, we ask Sam and James what's grabbed their attention. Will it be a rant or will it be a rave? Stay with us and find out after the break. Welcome back to Straight Talk. It's time now for our weekly rant or rave. Sam, you wanted to go first.
Thanks, Mandy, for the opportunity. Well, the thing I want to talk about today is actually backing our small local industries. So to give you an example of the New Zealand pork industry, we contribute over about $1 billion to the economy every year. Bigger than aquaculture, bigger than the dairy industry. The key thing that people mightn't understand is that I talked before about 45% of the product coming from overseas, 700,000 kgs a week. Well, of that $1 billion, the New Zealand grown industry contributes 80%. So what I'm saying is get behind the local industry. We talk about export industries and supporting the Fonterras, the red meat industries, the Zespris. Why not get behind an industry that's wanting to substitute for imports? Let me give you a little bit of analysis here. For every dollar that you spend with a New Zealand pig farmer, another $1.92 goes to the rest of the economy. For every dollar you spend on imported pork, only 78 cents goes to the economy. What do we want as an industry? Well, biosecurity is a key issue. We're talking about lowering the biosecurity fence. We're talking about putting an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. But actually, we're talking about industry having to pay for the ambulance. What we want is we absolutely want fairness. Protect our industry from exotic diseases. We've made a commitment to world-leading animal welfare, and we're getting there. But why undermine it with loud biosecurity and putting our industry at risk from the very worst disease in the world? Secondly, we want to play on a level playing field with this imported product. So, country of origin labelling, give New Zealanders a choice. 90% of New Zealanders want to eat New Zealand. They want to know where it comes from. 60% don't know. So give us country of origin labelling.
Sam, do you ever wake up in the morning sometimes and wonder what gods you've offended in a previous life? I mean, the pork industry just seems to get such a hammering all the time. I mean, I'm struggling to think of the last time there was some really positive press that came out about the pork industry. It seems like you guys are always battling.
Every industry's battling. I think I talked before about the fact that we do have this divide between urban and rural New Zealand. I'm really proud, actually, of the way that the industry has responded to it. So,
sorry to interrupt, but do you think sometimes that we're, and I guess this is a question of farming in general, that we are often being dictated to by people who actually know less about our industry but think they know more? Just I guess.
I mean, the challenge. I think the challenge is in our hands. I mean, it's actually our industry, and we've got to drive it. So that's why we have responded to consumers in terms of websites, in terms of labelling, in terms of shifting our welfare system to become world leading. It's why we're working so hard on our environmental footprint and doing some great work there. But at the end of the day, the challenge is that we need to educate as well. New Zealanders need to pay for actually what they're asking for.
Real little battler we've got here, haven't we, James? What have you got for us?
Well, actually, I'd like to have a bit of a rave, and that rave is about the sheep and beef industry, or the sheep and beef farmers, those that have survived the drought, survived the floods, the snow.
It's been a horrid year, hasn't it?
Well, a horrid couple of years, more than just a couple of years.
True.
And also those that have actually not bought into this doom and gloom that we're in a sunset industry. Those that, and particularly those that haven't sold out to the dairy industry or to forestry. I think it's fantastic. I mean, we're on the dawn of a new era, so to speak. We've got forecast world population is going to increase to something like 8 billion. We're 6 billion a few years back, 8 billion by 2030. The area of agricultural land per person is forecast to decrease from 0.23 hectares per person in 2005 to 0.18 hectare. That's a 20-25% drop in area. So in other words, we're in an industry where we've got guaranteed increased demand for our product, guaranteed decreased competition for our product. I mean, it sounds like a fantastic investment. You know, if you were offered any business that offered those sort of guarantees, wouldn't you be falling over yourself to invest in it? And I think that's what we're at, where we're at the moment in the sheep and beef industry, and the red meat sector strategy report, which is a mouthful, that provides a bit of insight as to what we can be doing together as an industry. And it's not just the sheep and beef industry. Obviously, those same opportunities are there for the pork industry, for the dairy industry. All food producers, we're in a fantastic position, and the country of origin issues are going to become more and more important. How we sell our story, how we actually go to the marketplace and educate and talk to not just educate our consumer, meet the demands and needs of our consumer.
Well, I tell you what, we've been given a real treat here with you two, I have to say, because I am listening to two people that are really strong leaders in our agricultural community, and the message that I'm getting is really strong support for agriculture. Thank you both for coming in, absolutely fantastic. That wraps up our latest edition of Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Furrow. I'd like to thank my guests, Sam McIvor and James Anderson. Thanks to you two for watching. Remember to check out my blog online at country99tv.co.nz. I love hearing from you. Catch you next week, and in the meantime, keep on talking straight.